So not only is this the first horror movie getting released in February, but it's also the first of these either low budget or just really weird sounding horror movies also getting released this month. I don't know what it is about February that we're seeing all these now, but sure. Come to Daddy stars Elijah Wood as Norval Greenwood, who visits his estranged father, played by Stephen Mchattie, after receiving a letter asking him to visit. And what seems like a kindly father-son reunion at first turns into something much more sinister, as Norval notices increasingly erratic and suspicious behavior on his visit. You know, Elijah Wood has been on an interesting career path lately. Despite starring in one of the biggest fantasy series of all time, Lord of the Rings, his choices since then have been against the grain sort of projects like Sin City or the TV series Wilfred, which was something else. And he's recently found a niche producing these really out there horror movies such as Color Out of Space and Mandy, both starring Nicolas Cage. And now he finds himself the star of something in a similar vein to those two movies. And I'm honestly not judging the guy for taking on these sort of roles, because I really like when actors take on these experimental movies that go against what they're normally known for. I look forward to these movies a lot more than the wide releases because no matter what I feel about them, I know it's going to at least be one of the more unique experiences of the year. And this one was definitely an experience. So, let's not waste any time. This is my review of Come to Daddy. This is a mix of both horror and comedy, and it does a pretty good job for the most part balancing out the two. I kinda got a good idea of what movie I was walking into when I saw the opening text, and it contained a quote of both Shakespeare and Beyonce. The movie goes for awkward humor. Elijah Wood is this privileged man-child who doesn't really get to talk to people too much, or so it seems. So as a result, he stumbles his way through most of his conversations. There are a lot of moments early on where he'll maybe blindly repeat something that he hears, or he'll go out of his way to really impress someone, and he does a really bad job at it. Like, there's a great moment early on, one of the first conversations he has with his dad, where he tries to make himself seem more connected business-wise, and his dad sees right through the act, and he takes the opportunity to mess around with him a little bit, and I got a good laugh out of that. I'd say the first 20 minutes or so is when the movie is at its funniest. A lot of the weirder lines are in these moments, and while there's this overall sense of being unsettling from the beginning, it shifts about halfway through and focuses a lot more on its horror elements. And the way it was shot, I really appreciated that as well. There was this creepy reddish tint that remained pretty consistent throughout the movie. It would also mainly take place inside this one house, and while there was this sense of confinement, there were some scenes where there'd be a lot going on in one room, and the shots would allow you to see everything that was going on. Elijah Wood is also a lot of fun to watch. He's initially very reserved, but he gets a lot thrown at him throughout the movie, and he seemed pretty game for anything sent his way. Stephen Mchattie was also absolutely insane, and he was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie. The way he would push Elijah Wood's buttons, I always got a kick out of it, and I always enjoyed the interplay between these two. I'd say pacing is this movie's biggest issue. This is a 90-minute movie that really should have been a 70-minute movie. For example, about halfway through, something big happens and the movie spends about 20 to 30 minutes dealing with the aftermath of that situation. It's mostly drawn out, repetitive conversations that could have been condensed into a few minutes, and it takes some time for the movie to regain its footing. There's also another sequence about halfway through the movie where the characters have to leave the house, and it feels disjointed compared to everything else. The way it just shifts gears, it feels like a totally different movie for a bit. There's just a mixing of tones that just feels a little choppy, and it causes some of the tension from the first half to break. But that leads into my main issue with this movie, which is how poorly it mixes in its character development with its plot. There are times where this will go from being a weird, out there horror comedy to suddenly shifting to this oddly mature movie talking about family, and I guess I should have seen it coming with a title like Come to Daddy. But the way this handles its character development, it always feels tacked on, and it's always right after something really bizarre happens. It tries to ground the movie, and it just comes off as very jarring. Like, there's one scene that's this bloody, over-the-top fight scene, and it's immediately followed by Elijah Wood trying to find out some information about his father, and suddenly it's very restrained, and the soundtrack's a little sweeter, and it's just really off-putting. It's almost as if the movie is holding itself back a little bit. I'm not familiar with the writer, Toby Harvard. I looked him up and he doesn't have too many credits to his name, but it's as if the movie reaches a certain point, he stops himself and says, well, we don't want to get too out there, and then throw in this little sweet moment that didn't feel 100% earned or that it went with the rest of the movie. Now, obviously, I'm all about having great, memorable characters. It's what gives a movie rewatch value. But if I had to pick the lesser of two evils, I'd rather a movie not have character development, so it strictly focuses on just having fun and letting loose, rather than attempting to have character development and it just feels tacked on, because then it's just not believable. And in this case, the character stuff just didn't work for me. Most of Elijah Wood's recent work has slipped under the radar lately, but if you want an idea of what type of roles he goes for these days, this isn't a bad place to start. It's definitely not his strongest work. Its tonal issues can be really messy at times, but when it works, it works. It can be really funny at times, and at other times be really unsettling, and there are enough of these moments that makes it a decent watch. Come to Daddy gets a 6 out of 10. Not the movie I was expecting. I was expecting this to be off the walls from pretty much start to finish, so in that regard, I was a little disappointed. But it's certainly not bad, and it can be entertaining. It's just not the end of the world if you happen to miss it. It's out on VOD now, so you can watch it whenever. But let me know, did you see Come to Daddy, or are you planning to see Come to Daddy, and what were your thoughts? Did you find it funny? Did you find it scary? Both? Neither? Do you want to see Elijah Wood take on more roles like this in the future? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you like what you see, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you next time.